Hi and welcome to InFocus. This is Jabbar Al-Ubaidi. Let me first start with just a few words that I would like to actually congratulate our sisters and brothers who had their faith is Islam, because today is actually the first day of Ramadan. And if you don't know something about Ramadan, please, in the age of internet, just Google it and see Ramadan, when people, Muslim people in the United States and throughout the world, they actually start fasting 2 hours prior to sunrise, and then they will break the fasting at the sunset. So imagine, when we say fasting, of course, you know, no water, no food, no whatsoever, and it is it's a kind of peaceful, spiritual exercise between Muslims and their God, what's Arabic, Allah. Anyway, so I wanted to share that with our audience. In this episode, as usual, we will travel to a new concept of conversation, which is bring 20 years of experience over Iraq. And you know, Iraq is one of the 18 main countries in the Middle East, which is known, at least by the United Nations, MENA. MENA means Middle East and North Africa. The total numbers really of these countries is 25 countries, but some of them are belonging to what's known as the Arab League, so they are active members. The other members, of course, they are only participants. And in MENA, Middle East and North Africa consist of three groups of countries. The Arab countries, which they speak Arabic and they have different culture, and you know, majority are Muslims. And then you have Iran and Turkey, where they have the Turkish language and also the Persian language, and they have their own cultures, though they shared with the Arab. The second group is the religion of Islam. And then you have the state of Israel, which is they put it like a third group, because sometimes you can describe it as a Mediterranean, sometimes you say part of Europe, but you know, Israel is part of MENA and Middle East, and they speak Hebrew, and of course Judaism is one of the major religions in the Middle East and in the Arabian Peninsula, where you have Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And in March 20, which is happened today is March 23. So 3 days ago, 20 years passed on the invasion of the United States, my country, our country, to the state of Iraq, which is, as I said, is part of the Middle East. And I'm really honored and pleased to have one of our veterans. You know, we have a lot of veterans in Bridgewater State University, and we are proud of them. We are proud of their service to the country anywhere, and we always wish them, you know, peace and of course prosperity, and we ask God and Allah to protect them, because they are doing something really to benefit all of us as citizens of this country. So on my right, I have a young man. I hope you accept this characterization. I see you as a young man, but also as a seasoned individual who served in Iraq in 2003. And you participated actually in the first Iraq operation.
Yes.
They call it, right? Iraqi operation. So Mr. L. Lacerda, I would like to open, kind of quiet conversation, interesting conversation to our audience. First of all, what actually motivated you to join the military in the United States in the first place?
Yeah, well, I wish there was some kind of spectacular story behind that. I think when I was younger, I grew up on Cape Cod, and there was a point in my life where I was kind of unsure of what direction I wanted to take, whether that be college or go out and learn a trade. I realized pretty quickly that college, I was not ready for that yet. I did not have any hunger whatsoever to go further in school. So I thought, okay, well, I'm not going to go do something just because everyone thinks I should do it. If I'm going to do it, it has to be because I am determined to get something out of it. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. While I was in high school, they had some recruiters come to the high school and talk to some of the classes. And there was a recruiter from the Marine Corps that came, and he was telling us a story about his car had broken down on the side of the highway. And it was raining out, and he was 10 miles away from a gas station at least. And he didn't have a phone, he didn't have a way to call for help. So he got out and ran to the gas station, bought a gas can and ran back. And I thought to myself, well, that's interesting. Not many people would just get out of the car and run 10 miles to the gas station. That's not something that someone would normally do. They'd sit in the vehicle, it's raining out, they'd wait for help. And I heard that story and I thought to myself, I want to have that kind of a mentality. I need to have that kind of motivation when it comes to looking at problems and attacking problems. And it motivated me, and I said, I need to figure out what this man has that I feel like I'm lacking. How do I get that? And I think it was at that point that I decided that was what I wanted to do. And I think I was 16 years old, 15, 16. I ended up signing up for the Marine Corps when I was 17 years old. I was in the delay entry program for about a year before I actually graduated, and then immediately shipped off to Paris Island for boot camp. So it was a situation where I saw something that was lacking in me. That motivation, I wanted it, but I knew that I did not have it. And when I saw that story, and I knew this man was serious about it. I knew that he was not joking around. That was actually his mentality on how to deal with adversity. And that's what motivated me to go and try to attain that.
Well, I think you got more than you were expecting.
Yeah, more than I bargained for.
And now you finish your duty, you came safe, and you finish also your undergraduate education, which is congratulations from Bridgewater State University. So to move on the same track but forward. When was the time when you were recruited to go with your colleagues to on your division to go to Iraq?
Well, to understand that, we have to go back a little ways. When I joined the Marine Corps, I went off to California to go to my school, my MOS school, which was amphibious assault. That was my school. So I ended up going off to California to go to that school. And then when I graduated that school, I came back to the East Coast and was stationed at Camp Lejeune. Not too long after I had joined the fleet, that's what they call coming into,
fleet.
You come into the fleet. Not too long after that, 9/11 happened. So it was at that point that I realized, this is not everything I asked for. I'm going to get it, whether I want it or not. It's coming, and I knew that we were going to be tasked with dealing with the aftermath of that, whatever that might be. I think at that time we did not really understand what was going to happen. Is it here? Is it there? Who's responsible? Are we going to Afghanistan? And that's actually what ended up happening is some of us were sent off to Afghanistan. The rest of us had no idea what was coming, but we knew something was coming.
Yeah.
We ended up being very busy throughout those 2 years, off doing different things. At the time, didn't make much sense. But then looking back on it, we understood that we were actually doing practice workups for what would eventually be the initial invasion into Iraq from the northern border of Kuwait. So we got that call. It would have been, we ended up leaving February the 8th, so it would have been pretty soon before that, in February of 2003.
So yeah. So what did you hear then that we were going to go to Iraq? Any specific purpose or any reason, or just you got to move? That mean you got to move?
Yeah, I mean, so I think that there was a lot of media coverage back then with what the public was being told, and then what we were to understand. But I want to say this was a different time, so we didn't have access to, like, we didn't have phones, weren't as, you couldn't just hop on your phone,
right.
and
Yeah.
so. And we didn't really pay attention to the news. We were kind of isolated. Like we didn't really question or it wasn't our job to ask, why. If you ask why, they say you're doing this, and you say, well, why am I doing that? That just wasn't.
Yeah.
It just wasn't part of the culture, and it never.
No, I'm not asking about why, but I mean, just as you said it very well, there's two narrative.
Yeah.
One to the public being pushed forward by the media.
Mm-hmm.
By then it's, of course, 9/11 of course was already done in
Right.
2001,
Mm-hmm.
and then a lot of accusations on some of the leaders in the Middle East, and of course then the opening of mass destruction came in that in
Right.
Iraq.
I remember hearing about that.
Right.
I remember hearing about that. I don't know. I think at that time, I remember hearing about there was something going on with they have weapons, or they have this, and he's he needs to. They wanted him to leave the country or something. Something like that.
Yeah. That's so. Then the first landing was where in Kuwait directly.
Yeah. So we flew into Kuwait February the 8th of 2003, and the reason that I remember that is because it was 2 days before my birthday. My birthday is on the 10th, so we flew in 2 days before my birthday. So happy birthday, and then it was from there. It was they were sending us off to northern Kuwait. And again, at this time, like, you see things on the news now where they have all these established areas with, living facilities.
Main media embedded with and also European and international embedded with you guys.
Yes, but I mean, at that initial point, they said, "Oh, we're going here."
Yeah.
Well, when we showed up there was nothing there. There was piles of rolled up tents and desert. There was nothing established yet. So when we got there, we had to put up the tents, and we had to, it's not like it was towards the end of it. They had time to establish things, and I remember coming back and seeing like Burger King trailers, and I was furious. But
So from North Kuwait, and then you cross the border to Basra, which is
So I want to say, hope I'm pronouncing this correct, but Ramallah, the oil fields.
Ramallah.
Yeah, Ramallah. So I remember we had staged. So we were basically right at the border, which is basically a mound of dirt, a berm, looking into Iraq. And on the other side of that berm was Safwan Hill.
Yes.
And they had been watching us from on top of Safwan Hill. and we were just sitting there. We had been training for a month in the desert just to get acclimated and sharpen up our skills and whatever the excuse was. So we were doing that for a month, and then finally it came that they had to move us up. I want to say that was the 18th or 19th. We moved to what they called the staging area, where the entire Marine Corps ground unit was set up, and we sat there, and I remember that we had a little radio, and the only station that we could get at that time was BBC. We could get BBC.
Yeah.
So I'm sure everyone remembers when the president came on and said, Saddam has 24 hours to comply. Well, we were listening to that on the radio, so we knew, okay,
he's coming.
He's definitely not going to comply. He's definitely not going to do what you want him to do. So this is happening. This is real now.
So you moved in.
Yep.
And then can you trace the direction, if you remember the cities that you?
Yeah, it's going to be a tough one. So So the way it happened was that conversation that on the radio happened, and we had dozers up there, and those dozers were in the front, and what their job was when they said we're going, they go and they push the dirt and make a path for us to go through. So that call came in. It was pitch black. It was the middle of the night when that call happened. We were doing fire watch. One person was up on watch. Everyone else was trying to get some sleep, which nobody slept. They woke us up. We headed the dozers. The aces went through, reached the berm, and we went straight through. We went immediately to the oil fields because I think the concern was that they would have a situation like they had before where the oil caps.
And this is what people until today they believe. The first I know it's the weapon of mass destruction that was there.
Yeah.
But oil is the main purpose of doing this. Until now, I'm telling you, that's the narrative in Iraq.
Yeah.
Yesterday and today, and it's going to continue. And now you said that. So you went there.
Yeah. So the concern was that they were going to blow the oil caps, and then what that would become another situation where it would be absolutely devastating.
Yeah.
Oil everywhere, smoke everywhere. It makes it hard to do what you're trying to do when you can't see.
Yeah.
And you're covered in oil and soot. Plus, it's not very good for the environment, I guess. But that was our first mission, was to go there, make sure everything was good, make sure nobody could, explode the oil wells and cause a big catastrophe. We did that. We went there. We made sure everything was good. The area was secured.
And the British were there too.
We had the British with us.
Because the British, by the way, you remember, they refused to actually advance to Iraq.
Yeah.
And although, remember, they were the colonizers, in Iraq. So they know.
Everybody.
They know the culture.
Yeah.
They know the history. Yeah. They know the people. They know, part of the language. So, but you guys just knew. You get into these things. Right?
Yeah, so the British were there.
Yeah.
And they had, if I remember correctly, they had special equipment with them to make sure that nobody was able to remote detonate the oil caps, which was great. So we went there, we did that, we secured it, everything was fine, nothing was exploded.
No resistance from
there was very light resistance, I believe, if I remember correctly. Nothing that really slowed us down.
At that point, where were the Iraqi soldiers and divisions and tanks, and where were they? Do you remember anything?
They were still north. So you have to remember, we came from the south.
Yeah.
But the Army came from, more from the north, the third Infantry Division.
Yeah.
And they got more resistance right off the bat. And it was actually pretty bad. And the reason I know that is because in some of the areas we ended up going into, the remnants of that fighting was still that it was apparent what had happened.
Yeah.
But for us, we were moving so fast. It was I think one of the things about that war that was unique was the way that we were able to move so quickly to the north, utilizing highways and doing things that you normally wouldn't necessarily do, traveling in large columns, moving very quickly, pushing all the vehicles to their absolute limit. And I just remember the goal was to get north as fast as possible.
Toward Baghdad.
Yeah, to get there and then eventually beyond that. A typical day was drive, move. Oop, ping, ping. We're getting shot at. Stop. Address that. Okay, move. Keep going.
But the air coverage was excellent.
We did have excellent air coverage.
I mean, of course, I was there, and I remember the first night. Just within 2 hours, no electricity in Baghdad.
Yeah.
Water was also a problem.
Yeah.
The Ministry of Defense was hit twice. I mean, I crossed that street. I vividly remember that. From Kuwait, and you proceed, north towards Iraq.
Mm-hmm.
So you see a lot of Iraqi soldiers actually on the road being killed and being devastated.
To be totally honest, but the majority didn't want to fight. If I remember correctly, a lot of times when we came up on a place or an area, you would see equipment and gear, but they were gone.
Okay.
They had gone the other way.
Abandoned their
and I don't blame them for that at all.
Yeah.
I'm actually grateful for that because, I mean, it
Save
is
lives.
not it's people have this romanticized vision of what it's like to have to deal with those things because they see it on the movies and they think it's cool and, oh, wow, cool explosions and all that stuff. In reality, it is probably the most horrible and horrific thing you could ever imagine. It is not in any way romantic or there's no positives that come out of that other than the bonds that are formed with the people that you are relying on. Outside of that, it's not something that I would wish on anybody to be put in that kind of a situation, let alone somebody, most of us were very, very young. We were in our very early 20s, some of us late teens. Some of these guys came straight out of high school and right to the fleet and on a plane over there to meet us.
Yeah.
So
you pushed towards Baghdad.
Yes.
How many days you stayed in Baghdad?
I want to say we were there. I think originally what had happened was we had pulled into Baghdad and we had set up in the center of the city in what they call an armored coil.
Yeah.
So we had and the interesting thing about Baghdad was the people. And this is throughout the entire situation, was the people in Iraq were not necessarily angry at us or there was no malice from a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
The problem was that there were people coming from outside of the country mixed in, and you didn't know who was who. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a clear situation where in a traditional war of the past, like Vietnam is a perfect example. You don't have a clear understanding of who you're supposed to be fighting with. It's a confusing situation because you have a population of people that don't necessarily have anything against you, but then you have mixed within that same group somebody who wants to kill you.
Yeah.
And it's hard to interact in a way where you're in a tough spot because you don't ever feel safe.
No, I mean I know time is so fast. When we talk about this very complicated topic. So any regret, any lessons? Because as you know, Paul Bremer in his book, actually admitted that the first mistake was to dissolve the Iraqi military, which is you have almost less than 1 million.
Yeah.
And all those people, they were employed by the then Iraqi government. The second thing, he admitted that the phrase de-Ba'athization of the the civil side of the society, where the people they were part of the Ba'ath party. She said that was a mistake, two mistakes that actually he wished not had done it. So anything that you regret or anything, I mean, what you heard about Iraq now, I mean, we have less than 3 minutes.
I don't necessarily, it's hard because there was a time in my life when I did have some regrets. But I was also young and confused and, going through, some issues with the aftermath of going through things like that. You have to kind of work that out. And now that I'm a little bit older and I'm able to reflect on it, I wouldn't say that I personally have any regrets, but I do understand those that do, and I do understand why. Again, complicated situation, and I regret that it even happened in the first place. But personally, I guess I just have learned to deal with, everything that comes with what happened at that time. You see where we are now today. I regret that it got to the point where it did.
So what point? I mean, what's your impression about what's going on in Iraq now?
There's so many different arguments
after 20 years. Yeah.
I mean, we're not talking about Afghanistan, but that whole situation, it's the exact same thing. You do all these things, and then you kind of see. It seems like you just kind of all that work you do, you feel like you're making a difference, and then somebody way above you pulls the plug on it all of a sudden for no good reason, or makes these poor decisions that kind of undermine all that positive movement that you made. In Iraq, we, for as bad as Saddam may have been, at least there was some structure. When you remove that, you're opening the door for bad actors to kind of step in and fill that void, and I feel like that's exactly what happened.
Well, I mean, I wish one day that you'll be able to visit Iraq. Probably you and I will visit.
Maybe someday.
The country is one of the, the really, in history, they call it is the cradle of civilization.
Yes.
But thank you for your service. Of course, none of this is your fault. I mean, all of the soldiers, in my opinion, it's not their fault. I mean, as we said before, the actually the recording of this episode of InFocus, soldiers, they are there to do a job, and I think they did their job. And you and I and everybody is sorry that we lost more than 4,000 souls and a lot of wounded people and all the consequences that you mentioned. So I wish you well, and I appreciate you really giving the time to reflect at least a little bit on 20 years of this disastrous experience. And hopefully, United States and Iraq will bond together and try to have more collaboration and really build the country again, because I think the Iraqi people deserve that, and I think us here we need to make sure that we recognize that what we did needs some work from us to fix that problem. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
For your time, and thank you for watching InFocus, and we'll see you next week. This is Jabbar Al-Ubaidi.